Can you hear me okay? Andy, Julia, welcome.
We got you. Hi, Stephen.
Yeah,
Hi, Julia.
Hi.
So we've got the breakout chat today. So we've got Julia Ross, MD from Julia Ross Group, and Andy Ingham, SVP of Sales at Bullhorn. So today we're going to be exploring the wonderful topic of technology, and in particular, how technology has changed a little, certainly how we're utilising it to communicate, whether that be on an ongoing basis or a post-COVID world. Things have changed since we've been in lockdown. So what we'd like to explore is really what technologies are being used, how they're being used, and really how we maintain that interpersonal element, which is at the heart of our industry. And I'm sure Andy and Julia would agree that we've probably all joined recruitment because we're people. But certainly with the more tech that's coming in, that's becoming increasingly difficult. I'm Stephen Riley. I'm co-founder of Fit for Work and Grad DNA. So I've certainly working in technology businesses. So to kick things off, I'm going to chair today. But we're going to have this three-way conversation. There are questions and things that you can ask. Hopefully we'll be able to get to some of those. But I'd like to come to you first, Julia. You're a big advocate of building strong relationships with your customers and candidates. So how is technology that influencing, supporting, hindering the way that you are communicating with either your client group or your candidate group in that sense?
Well, I think sometimes it's a little sad now that people consider client and candidate knowledge and getting to know the culture of your client, personal and their company, as a bit old hat now, and they think it's a bit irrelevant. I found that as time went on that more and more clients wanted me to do more of an HR role for them than just placing people in their organisations. So attrition and other aspects were more valuable than just feeding them people. So if you don't know the culture and you don't get to intimately know the person you're dealing with and the client you're dealing with, how are you ever going to get that right? How are you ever going to get attrition down? How are you ever going to hit it head on? So I think, technology gives us a greater chance of doing that. You can see your client on social media. You can see what they're saying. You can get a feel for them. You can get a feel for what's happening in their organisation often. If you follow them, you can see if they're growing, what they're doing, what sort of stuff going on. So we've got a lot more valuable information, but do we turn it into valuable content to talk either to that client and find out more about them, or indeed, get various clients on maybe a Zoom meeting or whatever you want to use and get them together and get some real valuable content out of it and valuable outcomes.
So just to go back a step, so what you're saying there, which is great, around using technology to understand more about organisations. Certainly when I started, companies were just launching websites and things, so you almost had to request brochures through the post. Now we've got lots and lots of information firing at us from numerous channels. Even though there's more information now, especially as organisations really try to push out content, do you find that the information that you're getting now through those numerous channels is as valuable as when you used to have, and especially pre-lockdown, more one-to-ones or client visits, or those sessions where you have more face time with customers or candidates, that type of thing?
Well, I'm obviously very old school. I started such a long time ago, and started with the largest recruiter in the world. And they used to say, treat it like you're getting married to the client. You know, you don't expect to marry them on the first date, do you? And they used to have, you know, 7 reasons to go back and get to know the client before you actually did volume business with them. That's, the whole world has become so fast now that no, we don't spend the time and we don't use the valuable information. I think, you know, sometimes if you're following a person, perhaps on LinkedIn or somewhere, you get a much better, you know, valuable piece of information than just looking all over the place at, you know, their organisation and just being random. You know, you've got to get into the actual culture. And I think we don't spend enough time thinking about it. If you're communicating with a person online, you can learn an awful lot about them. You know, just the way that they communicate, the sort of words they use, the sort of stuff they talk about, what they're interested in. All of that comes out very quickly on technology, but no, we don't use it as a, you know, a value. We don't then take it on board and say, okay, how can I make this valuable to my client? What can I do for them that would make that a, you know, you get bombarded with all sorts of rubbish. And, you know, etiquette on technology is awful. You know, you see people, I was actually dealing with someone talking about a candidate, a recruiter, and they forwarded my email onto the candidate. And I was like, you know, where is the etiquette and the professionalism and the value around, you know, the whole piece? It's got quite a lot of complexity, hasn't it?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I'm going to bring Andy in here. I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curveball here, Andy, because I've just thought of something there.
Thanks. Julia, you're relieved.
Yeah, that's it. And it is around that etiquette. So, you know, I think today we're going to explore a lot of things and it's going to be fairly fluid. But one thing that I notice is you tend to have a type of language that you have with your friends and your family. You tend to have, normally in business, where you would go to an office, you'd sit down at a work computer, you'd have your business language, you'd have more structured emails. And we're not talking about, you know, whether you be, you know, young or old or from one community or another. You just tend to choose a language that you're comfortable with that group. Do you see, Andy, that there's starting to be a relaxation or a crossover in either the channels or the language that we're using that's almost coming into the business world? So it's kind of crossing over from you might be conversing with your friends and then you suddenly start conversing with your customer in a similar nature.
Yeah, two immediate answers come to mind when I'm thinking about that. First my professional answer, and then my kind of real world answer as well. So I think our language naturally changes as we develop a relationship with somebody. So if you know, we could take our experience as a group, kind of coming into this call today. We started talking a few weeks ago. We're on email. It was all very P's and Q's, and you know, very professional. And we're kind of down to one line emails at this point in time. And that, I think that kind of goes hand in hand with building rapport. General relationship, absolutely. You know, kind of running in parallel with what Julie was saying there. Certainly from a client perspective, as you're developing that relationship, as you're learning more about each other, I think you use less professional language, if that's the right phrase to use, and more conversational language in your communication. But I also think mediums change as well. So, you know, you don't typically start a prospecting conversation on WhatsApp or SMS if you're looking to develop a business relationship. But it could certainly get to that point, and maybe that's the utopia. You know, if you're communicating with prospects and clients using, you know, public services like WhatsApp, you probably put that on a, you know, stack ranking scale of quite a good relationship. I think we've mentioned age once already, and I think there'll probably be a theme to this coming in. I think from a personal perspective, what I find challenging is when the mediums get mixed up. and you get an email with a smiley face at the end, which doesn't quite come through correctly on your phone and comes through as a standard graphic or something. And so I think there's a time and a place for the different languages, if you will, used in the mediums, and I think that does naturally change, and I think that's right that does so. But kind of for me on a personal level, kind of crossing up what would be a WhatsApp message in an email communication is kind of we've got that slightly wrong at that stage.
Yeah, so I think I agree. There is this element of this crossover, but is there? I'm almost thinking where I've certainly been on WhatsApp groups. It might be whether it might be in the workplace. You might have a team, you might have an extended team, and as we start to collaborate and share, and I think technology is going down that route where you've got, if you work in a tech business, you'll have numerous Slack channels, and then your phone's buzzing. Are we getting into this situation? I feel as though again, I'm showing my age, we're going to have to stop mentioning this because I've got a few grey hairs, but the email wasn't around when I started in recruitment, and then it became this fantastic tool of being able to get out information and share information about candidates and communicate much quicker. Until, of course, we started copying everybody in and blind copying everyone in. And then our inboxes became so full. Mm-hmm. It's almost impossible to stay commercial and stay on top of things. I don't know whether it's just me, but I feel as though we're, especially with the change of lockdown, we're now so much more reliant on technology and the different channels that everyone almost has their own preferences on frequency, or do you go large and have a massive group, or is it one-on-one? And I feel as though sometimes now I can't get my head down to do a piece of work for half an hour or an hour because you've got so many channels to monitor. So Julia, I'm just wondering, when choosing channels or the way to communicate, whether it be internally, externally, how do you choose them for your organisation? Do you have a preference where you say to your organisation, this is our preferred channel, or do we allow our candidates or our customers or our staff to choose whatever's best for them, and we're all kind of bombarded? I'm trying to explore what's the right thing to do to allow choice, but then how do we stay, productive and on point?
I think there's several answers to that. So I think number one, if you build your business to be client obsessed, which client and candidate obsession is my thing, so if you listen to what they want, it will drop out of that anyway. So, you're going to know who wants to communicate with you how. So, first of all, it's listening to your client and your candidate and watching where they're going. And I personally feel that should be where it sits. However, if you feel that you want to be proactive in delivering something, then you may have to choose what your organisation's preference is from that point of view. So if you say, like when I mentioned getting clients together as maybe a group to debate something, maybe we invite clients, then you've got to decide, are you doing it on which piece are you going to do that, and who likes what? Most people have got it all now. So, I think it depends if you're outgoing or if you're taking stuff from the client. I think the second bit is how your system's built, because for me, I don't like everything being random. I'm a great believer that your organisation should at least keep control of traffic. Because if you've got people going off and doing stuff on all sorts of things, before you know it, you've got a client that's WhatsApped a consultant on their personal phone with a booking that you don't even know about. It's not in the system, it's not tracked, it's not processed properly. So how do you deal with process and procedure if you start letting all your technology go all over the place? So I think there's, you know, for me, it goes back to how do you best serve the client? And that's where everything starts for me, you know, getting in my client's head, which at the moment is an interesting thing anyway, because a lot of our clients are looking for what the future means for them. They're in a bit of a traumatized state. So they're looking for a bit of guidance. So it's quite complex again.
Yes, so just putting you on the spot just a little bit there. If you had a customer, and this can be theoretical, of course, if you had a customer that shared a requirement, an urgent requirement, or maybe an offer of a candidate to WhatsApp to a consultant's personal phone, and that consultant in their own time, because they're working from home, has maybe been engaging with the candidate over WhatsApp, you know, are we in that situation where a consultant should be encouraged to pass on that offer to the candidate through WhatsApp? And at what point is it, you know, that's in the best interest of the candidate and the customer, assuring there's no, you know, data privacy issues, to get the offer out and get it accepted? At what point does that come back into the system, and at what point do you allow it to run its natural course outside of the system, and at what point do you say this needs to come in to be audited and trackable? Well,
I think again it's dependent on the customer, because if you're talking, if it's, you know, Monday morning and someone's ringing because they've got a receptionist that they need in 10 minutes, you can't have that going somewhere obscure, particularly if you've got a branch network that can work on it together. So that's one part of the industry. If you're doing a search for a MD, you're in a totally different environment. Yeah. So again, it's customer, it's what is right for the customer. The customer that wants someone in 20 minutes down the road is going to have a very different situation than someone who's going to wait 3 months to have a top level person put forward for a high level role. So for me, it all goes back to understanding the client, you know, and understanding, you know, what part of the market you're dealing with. You know, I guess I've dealt from receptionists up to a legal partner or someone like that, or a team out of finance that might be totally, you know, those processes are very, very different. And, you know, the client's very different. You know, a consultant who's placing a partner in a legal practice is going to behave very differently than someone that's sitting in a consultant's desk supplying people in admin or, you know, digital people.
Yeah, there's sorry, just going to jump in there, Stephen. There's an element of immediacy about some of the communication methods as well, and visibility that kind of goes online with that. So we know, you know, our sort of like consumer worlds, if you will. If we send a WhatsApp, we know when it's been delivered, we know if it's been read or not. And so we're then waiting for a reply, and, you know, waiting for the text to go from grey to blue. They've read it, why have they not replied? That immediacy and that urgency gets lacked if you kind of transform into email, because it kind of hits someone's inbox and, you know, like, let's see when they reply, if you will. We at Bullhorn ourselves, we kind of follow a very similar process in terms of having so like a company provided assets, if you will, in terms of communication channels. So our corporate messaging standard is Slack. There is, you know, there's an element of that in terms of being able to see when colleagues are online. If we have customers or prospects as well that kind of use the service, you can interlink between the two. But I would be lying if I did not say, you know, there's certain groups, certain individuals, like within our business, that reverts to other channels, myself included. You know, in terms of WhatsApp, you know, I have corporate groups, so like within inside Slack that I communicate with, and we also have like corporate groups inside WhatsApp, because it becomes the medium of choice. And I think that, you know, I'm so like vehemently agreeing with Julie here. It ends up being, certainly in my opinion, very much client customer driven. You know, how do they want to be communicated with? You know, you take ourselves back into our consumer lives, and it's, you know, it's the old marketing survey, isn't it? Marketing preferences when you sign up to a new service, or, you know, join a website or something. It's like, how would you like me to communicate with you? But you're going through that evolutionary process of kind of understanding how best to communicate with candidates, with clients, as part of your relationship build process, as part of that rapport building exercise that we all go through.
Yeah, I'm wondering whether those types of communication channels will very soon, if they haven't already, find themselves into contractual documentation. You know, it used to be that you could only, you know, receive a job order if it was by a certain person on an email by a certain time. And now, of course, as these channels change and the immediacy of that requirement changes, maybe we will see things like you can communicate via WhatsApp or give a job order in these different formats. But over to you, Andy, again on, so obviously Bullhorn servicing the recruitment industry, and certainly historically, you know, we used to have, you know, faxes and sending letters and candidates, and we were, you know, ringing people from home. And then, of course, we moved to mobile phones so we could communicate when people are on their lunch breaks. And then the system integrated with text message services, you know, so you could reach people really quickly to book jobs and find out availability. What is, and I don't want to give you to give away any company secrets, of course, but what do you see the future of? What's the market asking for now from a technology perspective to draw that in to a system so you can track things? What are the latest trends, or what are you being asked for?
Great question. So I think we're in the middle of quite an accelerated period of time right now around digital transformation. And I think it's probably worthwhile explaining what I mean by that, because it's almost like rewind 15 years when everyone was talking about cloud technologies, but you asked 10 people and you had 10 different articulations of what cloud technology was, and it's, you know, it's pretty much standard now. But in terms of certainly when we think of digital transformation, we kind of consider it, if you will, in three stages, and I think this is the evolutionary process that. It's not, maybe this time last year we were talking about this being an emerging trend. I definitely think, you know, COVID and the lockdown situation has accelerated this position, but it all starts with, you know, that true digitization of your assets, of your database. That seems pretty logical, but, you know, if you want to drive a digital transformation program, have, you know, a fully integrated, you know, marketing-driven, candidate, customer-centric communications program, then you've got to have all your assets digitized. You can't have information disparately located in spreadsheets or on post-it notes on people's desks. You know, you've got to have access to kind of all the latest intelligence around any given topic. So, you know, the first piece really is digitizing your database and kind of getting yourself onto whatever platform you choose to use, whatever your master system of record is, that it's got an open API infrastructure and you can connect to the world, essentially. We then kind of consider the second phase being, I think, where we are right now, which is automation, and you know, that availability in terms of the whole lockdown situation and kind of, you know, driving home working, I think accelerated the situation. You know, if I look back to we put out what we call grid surveys annually into the agencies that we kind of operate within the marketplace. And as we looked at last year's results in terms of digital transformation projects, then 25% of agencies responded saying, yeah, that's something that's on our agenda for the forthcoming year. You kind of fast forward to this year, and that number's gone up to 43%. So a 72% increase in agencies looking to digital transformation projects. And I do think absolutely, you know, the situation that we collectively all found ourselves into accelerated that position. But it's not, you know, it's not actually why people look to drive automation across recruitment, in my opinion. I think they're looking to, you know, what are the outputs you're looking for? I think you're looking to drive, you know, better data health, better communications with both candidates and clients alike. And I think emphasis there from a candidate perspective, if you kind of want to dig into that, I'm happy to do so. But, you know, top of the tree for me is, you know, process automation to drive efficiency. And this is where you kind of get into, you know, what I think is a super healthy debate around where does technology stop and human beings start when it comes to recruitment. And we, you know, within the sector, you hear a lot of talk about, you know, can the job of the recruiter be automated? And I'm absolutely in the camp of no, it's not. Like, finding people meaningful jobs, you know, changing their lives is a human skill set. But there are so many activities that, you know, have to take place in that process, which you know, absorb time, which can be automated to kind of free up more time for the recruiter to do meaningful stuff, or the consultant to do meaningful stuff. I think, you know, really does support driving the efficiency. And again, I think kind of you know, the COVID situation's driven that. We were talking earlier today about you know, a lot of agencies had to utilize the furlough scheme in the UK, as we were kind of in that, you know, uncertain, or was it like April, May, June, sort of this time last year, I guess. But life still had to go on. You know, you still to go out and talk to your clients, probably even more so than ever before. You still to go out and find jobs. You're still kind of looking for candidates to place, but you're doing it on less resources. So there's a very big piece in that, in terms of where automation can pick up some of these. I don't want to say mundane tasks, because they're all important tasks. You think of, some people think of automation as like just doing the stuff that, you know, needs to take place, but automation today can do anything. Like, automation can be, you know, a trigger for reaching out to a contractor that's coming to the end of the placement, and kind of queuing up the conversation for, you know, where should we go next, and kind of not losing that opportunity. Automation can present you know, additional opportunities to those silver medal candidates that didn't quite make it, and, you know, here's some other opportunities. All things that, quite frankly, a good recruiter with all the time in the world would absolutely do day in, day out. But that's not the world we live in. And so this is where I think the use of technology and automation absolutely benefits us.
So I'm trying to work through, so everything that you're saying, I'm just thinking of the last certainly the last 18 months, and then probably the 10 years before that. Everything that you're describing, I imagine this big computer system with, you know, loads of buttons and gadgets and things. And then the skill of a recruiter, what makes a great recruiter, is evolving. And there's part of me that thinks, you go back 5 years and a great recruiter was be able to dip in and out of bits of technology, maybe great at Boolean searching to find those hard to find candidates, but then everything was around, you know, being able to put the pieces together. If we're relying on technology to do more of that, are the skills of the recruiter changing? And or is the fundamental skills of the recruiter changing? So is it where it used to be that personalized touch, or is it now just the ability to be able to manipulate different parts of technology to make it into a seamless loop? Mm-hmm. Because ultimately, where I can remember working in agencies, and you always had that one person that was your highest biller, that was normally head and shoulders the highest biller above everyone else. No one really had an idea how they did it. You know, there was always that little bit. So yeah, to you, Julia, what is the changing skill of the recruiter in this new world, possibly working from home or working from home more? Is there a new skill, or is it the same skill, just applying it in a different way?
The piece that I think Andy is talking about when he talks, he doesn't want to say that you know, what we can do through technology is mundane, because it's not. I mean, we all know now that, you know, you can replicate a lot of things that the human brain processes. What we really find it hard to do is the intuitive part of the piece that a lot of people still can't even, although we talk about artificial intelligence and we say, you know, technology can do all these things, there is a piece that comes from a recruiter's gut. There's a piece that comes from all of their experience in life, not just something that you can replicate in the workplace. It's, you know, what size of family they came from, what happened to them growing up in that family, what were their experiences about that, what taught them to have this thing that allows them to interpret a person and a role, or whether it's the existing role or manipulating a role, or, you know, perhaps molding the person a bit. What gives certain people that intuition to be able to do that? Now, for me, the better and better technology you get, the more it allows us to think and use our intelligence and our soft skills to actually get that stuff right, which is where I started off talking about how do we fit things correctly if we don't understand what we're trying to match together. Because, you know, that, at the end of the day, that's the reality. Small jobs, little jobs, many jobs, one job, whatever it is, we're matching. And for me, it's the soft stuff that comes. That's why you've got billers sometimes that can just do stuff that no one else can do. You generally, when you sit down with them, they're usually often quite selfish. They're people that don't waste time, and they can get to a decision quite rapidly because of their intuition. They can assimilate a lot of information, soft information about a person. They can take all that in and match it to, and it, you know, crazy stuff that it's going to, I think technology is going to take a while before it can, you know, no doubt it can do that now, but in terms of doing it in a mass sense, you know, when someone walks through the door, how does their language, their body language transfer onto a computer? It doesn't. But if they walk into a room, you can assess it.
So I sometimes wonder, though, with all that intuition that you talk about, that ability, whether again, imagining the computer and the WhatsApp with loads of bells and whistles and everything going off, every sort of Slack buzzing, and, you know, your phone ringing and everything going on, whether recruiters won't have time to do that element because the automation's trying to do it for you, and whether we're going to lose some of that, or whether that will give the time to do it. And I'll just give an example, because you mentioned something there, Julia, about just knowing when to do some things. And as an example, it could be when to contact a candidate, when to chase them up, when to ask them about an offer. But now with our systems, when we look at automation, you look at CRMs of engaging talent pools, you almost have to build all of that beforehand and say, okay, you know, like marketing emails, you know, you'll send an initial email, and if you don't react, you'll send another one that's slightly different X many days after. So I almost find that on occasions that takes more time and effort and planning, and more that academic elements of the different parts of the process. And I wonder whether good natural recruiters suddenly don't have the time to do that because they're servicing so many, you know, different machines. Does that make sense, Andy?
Well, that's where you've got to sit it on valuable technology. And I think the first time, certainly I tried to do what you're talking about. We did it with Siebel Systems, it became Oracle, and sort of we built this thing that could take you to the moon. But when we switched it on, the whole company was like, oh my God, because there were so many escalations and so many things telling us what to do. We were all like, oh, you know, what's that all about? And we had to switch a considerable amount of it off because exactly what you're talking about happened. And I don't think that's what we need. I think the soft skills have to be kept separate, and the things that are you know, able to sit in technology, and we keep the valuable pieces out. Now that's a very difficult process because, you know, each organization has got to sit down and understand what they're dealing with. It's no use going to Andy and saying, I want the same system to run, getting me 50 people overnight in a call center when an emergency happens that, you know, some organization's got to have a load of people for a disaster or something. You cannot build a system that deals with that in the same manner as getting someone who's maybe working in life sciences or something that's a totally different skill set and has a total different mix of soft skills, hard skills. So every managing director's got quite a job on their hands to understand what technology is valuable to their organization. And, you know, it's quite, I think it's quite complicated.
And do you see that, Andy, the different types of organizational or industries are utilizing different functions and features, or does it go down to single recruiter seat configuration?
So I think different aspects of the process will get automated in different ways. I think both at a company level, team level, and individual level, and that is what we see today. Certainly in the Bullhorn platform. I also think we kind of have to remember. Let's think about this from a candidate perspective as well. Like we kind of all know when we're being automated, you know, when we're talking to a robot or a chat bot or, you know, kind of automated message. And I think, you know, there is a huge technology leap between automation and artificial intelligence. So kind of, you know, bringing that intimacy into play and being able to read body language, you know, that's, as a sector, I don't think we're in that place yet. We're kind of getting to grips with, you know, what I discussed earlier as being kind of phase 2 and the use of automations. But also people, as human beings, I think we're quite happy to develop, if you will, our trust in so like utilizing these services as a relationship develops. So, you know, if I'm kind of going on to, let's take this back into consumer world, if I'm going onto a website and try to find something and the chatbot pops up and says like, hey, how can I help you? And, you know, one of the options is looking to contact you, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'll click that and I'll get the information I need, and I'll leave quite happily and make my phone call in that example. But, you know, to kind of engage in a fully automated experience without any relationship with that organization out the gates is challenging for me as a consumer. But I think the key here is kind of using it best placed to drive like the right results for your business. That's kind of what this is coming down to. So, you know, we can talk about, quite rarely so, client and candidate experience, but ultimately we're thinking about bottom line, we're thinking about revenue growth and kind of bottom line profitability at an agency level. And that's why people invest in certain types of automation technology. We just as a silly data point, we have around 1.2 million automations running across the Bullhorn platform today, and that number's growing exponentially across the client base. But well, I'll sort of preview here. But when we were doing one of our prep sessions, Julia asked me a question in terms of like, does that drive results? And when we do a compare and contrast between clients that are utilizing automations and those that aren't, we've seen a 15% increase in placements. Now, take that 15% and kind of work it out, you know, individual agency level. That's kind of, you know, revenue growth and kind of bottom line profitability as well. You know, so it definitely speaks in volumes in that sense. But the simple things can be automated. You think about, sitting with the top recruiter and kind of what makes them special. Well, they never stop. They're always on the go. They have an amazing memory to kind of capture all these tasks. Something as simple as like how many recruiters, send that text message or that WhatsApp out to a candidate on day one to say, good luck, let's connect later. They might still be in bed. The system has sent that message because it's pre-programmed to do it on all placements on day one. And a calendar invitation goes out for them to connect that evening or whatever. These are tasks which kind of drive, in my opinion, candidate intimacy. And this is what kind of drives that repeat business. So there's a time and a place that does not absolve, the human touch and the human interaction, which I think is what all great recruiters have.
Yeah, fantastic. So we're coming to the close. We've got a couple of minutes left. Is there, I guess, this might be a little bit cheeky to ask because both of you been in the industry for a few years. What's your preference? The old way of opening up the post in the morning and sitting there for the first hour, reading CVs and picking up the phone and then ringing your clients, or the new world where you've got 3 wraparound screens running multiple systems and all the lights are buzzing and flashing and telling you those high value tasks that you need to do first? That was a little bit cheeky, but what's your preference?
Easy for me. I'd love to have old margins.
With new productivity.
Old fee structure with new technology. And I guess for me, I find it fun. I'm a very inquisitive human being and I love things like gamification and just playing with how, you can find out more about humans to get to know and, do the job better for me. But yes, I'd like the sort of money we used to have available to us with a streamlined procedure, really.
And you, Andy, and I know you've probably got a personal and a corporate answer for that.
So I'm a technologist at heart. So which way do you think I'm going to go with this one? So, I mean, 100%. Like in my view, then I'm kind of all for the new world in terms of allowing technology to drive the right things. It will not take over and cannot take over everything. I think I've said that a few times, and I most definitely believe in that. But using technology as an enabler to allow you to kind of do the things that really add value, both at a candidate and a client level in terms of relationship. And I kind of relate that into my my current world at Bullhorn. It doesn't matter how many screens I have here or how many accounts I'm across. You get so much value out of that when we get back into the face-to-face world and having the client face-to-face relationships, and that 10 minutes at the start where you're just getting the lowdown on what's been happening and relationship building. I don't think you can replace that. But technology enables me to create the time to be able to do that, and that's super important to me.
So I was just going to say one of the bits when I was hands-on recruiting was when someone accepted that job, regardless of money, whether there was a fee, just when you'd made that match, no matter by hook or by crook, how long it had taken, whatever you used, that was kind of like the best bit.
Yeah.
And I'd, whether you're looking at CVs on paper or using technology, I guess that bit will always exist when that placement's made, when the offer's accepted, when the candidate comes off the phone and they're happy. That's the best part of the job.
Just change someone's life. It's great.
Yeah. To both of you, we're out of time. So thank you very much and take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Julia. Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you.